How's it going, everyone? This is Nicholas Mateo again, and today I have an excellent tutorial for you. I will be doing the Last of Us color grade for warm and cooler looks. Now, this is going to be a two-part episode. This first part will be doing the warm tones that you would see in the show. Now, as a quick recap of my history of The Last of Us, I played it when it first came out in 2013. Absolutely loved it. It was an absolute masterpiece. And it was literally one of the greatest stories ever told in a video game. I obviously played it again in the remastered version in I forget what year it came out, but I played it on PS4. The sequel came out, loved it, very controversial though. But then I got to play the remake of the first game, and I thought it was even better. And then this show came out, and at the time of this recording, we're on the second episode already, and I'm already really loving it. I think it's one of the greatest video game adaptations I've ever seen. Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey, they absolutely crush it. Even though they don't necessarily look like their video game counterpart, they are brilliant actors, and especially Bella Ramsey, who doesn't deserve all of the hate that she's currently getting, but that's a story for another time. Now, today we're going to be talking about the warm color grades that we are seeing in this show. So, without further ado, let's begin. This right here was shot on red. So let me just build out my node tree structure. It's obviously logged, so we're going to start labeling. This is going to be our IDT. And the N is going to be our ODT. I do this because I want to work within the color space. This is going to be, exposure / contrast. I'm going to be doing a bunch of things with that. Here we'll have our primaries. Then we're going to do some HSL curves. Apply a little bit of glow if necessary. And we can apply some film grain if necessary. Now, to begin this process, let's do our color space transform. Shot on red. Bring it into a DaVinci wide gamut color space. Our output color space is going to be Rec 709. I really like working in this workflow. Now, don't worry about the blown out highlights. We're going to fix that in our exposure. Now, there's going to be a lot of pushing and pulling with this grade to really capture this desaturated autumn look. So first thing I'm going to do is bring this down. Somewhere around here. I think what I'm also going to do before going forward with that is I'm going to go into my HDR and I'm going to raise the offset by half a stop. Somewhere around there, simply because it's acting like a stop in the camera, so everything will be genuinely lifted because I'm mainly looking at her face. I'm mainly looking at her eyes to better match the exposure on his face. Okay, so now we can go back and start creating this S-curve. Don't necessarily worry about the highlights right here. We'll fix that later for the sky. And then we're gonna take the black points, lift them up a little bit. Somewhere right there is pretty good. We do before and after. Okay. Now, we can also still go into our lift gamma gain. Maybe bring this down a little bit for those highlighted areas. Raise this up a little bit, raise the gamma up a little bit. And we want our black points to better match here. Somewhere similar like that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is actually skip the primaries for right now, and we're going to go right into our HSL curves, because we want to take this green and turn it into the desaturated autumn orange/yellow. And we're going to keep an eye on this as well. But we're also going to go into our vector scopes as well. So we're going to grab our hues, bring it somewhere around there, before and after. And now we're really going to desaturate it. Somewhere around there is definitely closer. Maybe bring in a little bit more green. Just a little bit. Somewhere around there. And I think what we can also do is in this, we can create a parallel node. We're going to grab our luminance, which will basically be our sky. Actually, you know what? Let's not even do that. Before you do any kind of qualifier, try to utilize as best you can with your primaries and your HDR palette. So let's let's try our highlights real quick. I'm going to bring down the high range so we have more of the highlights to work with. And what I want to try to do here is really bring in this sky. This sky is very warm, hints of green, and as you can see in our waveform that the reds, actually let me just show you with the eyedropper tool. Yeah, you can see that the red and green are pretty much mixed all together, and the blue is all the way down. So we'll take a look at, we'll keep that in mind when we're building this. So I can already tell I can just start bringing my reds down, or sorry, my blues down. And increase some red. Not too much, we want that fine line. Play around with the green. Actually, we can bring in a little bit more red. Do before and after. Somewhere around there. It's still a little too dark or too bright, so we can try bring it out with our light. make some adjustments with our HDR. Somewhere around there. And now let's bring it down a little bit. Somewhere around there is good. Now, if we want to take it a step further, we can still mess around with gain. I also noticed too that there's a little vignette going around this area, so we will do another parallel node and make that adjustment. This will help really bring in our sky. Something like that. We want to make this as subtle as humanly possible, so.
Slow down. There's nothing to get you. Can always turn it around. Oh, I shouldn't have met you. I only let you
Okay.
die.
Now, overall, this is still a little too bright, so I'm going to go back into my exposure and continue to raise this or lower this.
Shouldn't have left you. Shouldn't have left you.
And there you go. So I might want to go into my shadows and apply some contrast in her face. I'm noticing it's kind of lifted a little too much. So I'm just going to bring this down, go far with it, then go back, dial it back. All right, it's much better. Let me check my my vector scope. Before, after. I like where this is sitting, actually. I don't think that glow and grain is actually really necessary. When I was watching the show, I didn't notice any kind of grain. It would have been more noticeable. I would have applied it. Just to recap, let me just disable all this and let's go through it step by step. So my IDT and ODT, it was really overexposed, so went into my exposure, created an S curve, lifted everything with my global HDR, made some adjustments in my primaries. For this particular look, I didn't do anything with up primaries. Then I went into my HSL curves, really shifted the hues of the trees to fit this vibrant autumn look. Used my highlights and a little bit of HDR, or actually no, I don't think I did anything with the HDR. Oh no, I did, never mind. Then some highlights to really bring in this right here. Then I created a subtle vignette. That's it for this desaturated warm autumn look. Now moving on to my second shot. this is a crazy riot scene with fire, so this time around I'm going to go with this shot that we seen in the trailer with the bloater. And I'm essentially going to do the same thing. Let me just copy and paste this real quick. Now this one is going to be a little different. I know I'm going to apply a little bit of a balance because the warmness of this is really shifted in the yellow-green zone. Whereas with this, it's pretty much all red. So I'm going to find my hero frame. We can do somewhere around here. Somewhere right here is good. Okay, so much like the other shot that we did, I'm going to raise this, but I have to stop and see where we are. Maybe raise it up a little more. Looking at this area, seems pretty close. Yeah. Actually, you know what? We don't even really need to apply that much of a contrast. We can maybe bring this down a little bit, the shadows down a little bit. Somewhere around there. Okay. Now, the biggest thing here is going to be our balance. And if you remember from my previous tutorial, I used my offset for the balance. We're going to bring it down to somewhere around here. Now that definitely looks crazier, doesn't look realistic, but that's okay because we are going off of the information that we have here. Now I do notice that the highlights are definitely brighter. So what we're gonna do is we can go into our HDR again, disable this. Raise this somewhere around there. Start raising it. We don't want to go too far because we don't want to lose any of the detail in the fire. So somewhere around there is good. Now, I do notice that the actual fire itself is sitting more in the warm orange yellow than everything else where it's shifted in the green hues. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into our primaries and start shifting gain a little towards that vibrant orange yellow, just a little bit. Somewhere around there. It's very, very subtle. It doesn't make a huge difference with the overall layout, but that's okay. So we are actually good here. So let me just check my vector scopes, do before and after. It's sitting roughly in the same quadrant. If we want to really make sure we got the fire correct, maybe we can, because as you can see, the fire is sitting somewhere in this area and we are just a little too lowered. We can really just grab and just maybe raise it up just a little bit. There you go, somewhere around there. Again, this is one of those fairly simple shots, but it's definitely a look, and it makes all the difference knowing that the mid-tones are sitting in this sort of green quadrant. So the biggest takeaway from this grade is everything that can be done in literally a few simple steps with primaries and HDR palette. And we are good. Let's roll the full clips. I hope you guys really like this one. Please stay tuned for part 2 when I go in depth on the cooler tones of this Last of Us show. Please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you later.